Sarah clutched Emily tightly, her scream echoing across the dim apartment as Michael stormed through the door. The slam rattled the frame, a violent punctuation to years of betrayal. Sirens wailed faintly outside, but Sarah heard only her own heartbeat pounding like thunder in her chest. Emily whispered, "Mommy, don't let him leave us," her voice trembling with fear too heavy for a child. Sarah pressed her lips to her daughter's hair, whispering back, "I'll protect you." Michael's shadow lingered in the hallway, his anger etched into every step. The silence after his exit felt louder than the fight itself. Sarah's tears burned hot, not just from grief but from resolve. This was not an ending. It was the beginning of a battle she could no longer avoid. In that moment between loss and defiance, a vow was born. She would fight for Emily with every ounce of strength left in her. The apartment sank into silence, broken only by Emily's shallow breathing. Sarah carried her into the small bedroom, placing her gently on the bed. "You're safe here," she whispered, though doubt gnawed inside. The rain outside beat harder, like a rhythm to her restless thoughts. She looked around the room, decorated with faded posters and toys, a fragile sanctuary in a world turned hostile. Emily clutched her blanket, her wide eyes following Sarah's every move. Sarah kissed her forehead and sat beside her, her body trembling. The echoes of Michael's anger lingered like a storm she could not escape. In the dim light, Sarah vowed again silently that this child would never feel abandoned, no matter what the cost. She straightened her shoulders, knowing the fight ahead would test every ounce of her resolve. The night stretched long, and Sarah's mind wandered to the years behind her. Memories of double shifts at the diner, calloused hands, and long nights of exhaustion surfaced like ghosts. She remembered carrying Emily asleep from buses, whispering lullabies through tears she dared not let her daughter see. Every choice had been sacrifice, every breath a promise to keep going. "I worked for you, Emily. Every hour, every tear," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. The weight of her sacrifices pressed heavily on her chest, yet her gaze softened as Emily stirred in sleep. It was love that had held her together all these years. Now betrayal threatened to undo everything she had built, but as she sat in the quiet, Sarah felt a flicker of strength rise inside, refusing to be extinguished. Morning brought no relief. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Rachel, her longtime friend. The words were simple, but heavy. "We need to talk." Doubt gnawed at Sarah, memories of Rachel standing beside her through storms now clouded by suspicion. Could she trust her? Or had betrayal reached deeper than she imagined? Emily sat quietly at the kitchen table, tracing circles on the wood with her tiny fingers. Sarah forced a smile, whispering, "Everything will be okay," though her heart wasn't sure. She looked at the silent phone, the unanswered call a weight she couldn't shake. Betrayal from an enemy hurt, but betrayal from a friend could shatter the very core of trust she clung to. She took a deep breath, bracing herself for answers she wasn't sure she wanted. Sarah stepped onto the balcony, the city humming below, her thoughts racing. Michael's rage, Rachel's message, and the shadows of her past pressed in from every side. She gripped the railing, whispering to herself, "I want break." The night wind tangled her hair, carrying the faint sound of sirens that seemed to mock her fragile peace. Inside, Emily slept, her innocence untouched by the storm, threatening to consume them. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of fear pressing down, but also the spark of determination burning within. This was no longer about survival. It was about fighting back. She whispered into the night, "For Emily, I will not give in." And with that vow, she turned back inside, ready to face whatever came next. The office felt colder than usual, the hum of printers masking Sarah's restless thoughts. Papers stacked on her desk, blurred as she stared at them, lost in fear of losing the one steady thing she still had. Her manager walked past, offering a clipped nod that felt more like a warning. Sarah whispered under her breath, "I can't afford to fail now." The thought of bills, legal fees, and Emily's future twisted her stomach. Her phone buzzed with another message from Michael, his words sharp and calculated, reminding her of the custody fight ahead. She shoved it away, trying to focus on the numbers before her, but her vision swam with exhaustion. Every keystroke felt heavier, like proof that the world was closing in. Still, she straightened her back, forcing herself to stay steady. Emily needed her, and no job loss could be allowed to break them now. Rachel arrived at the cafe before Sarah, her posture stiff, eyes darting toward the door with unease. Sarah entered, her steps hesitant, her heart thudding like a drum. They sat across from each other, the silence between them heavier than words. Rachel finally spoke. "You know I'd never hurt you." Sarah studied her face, searching for cracks. Could she trust the woman who had once been her anchor? The bitter taste of betrayal hovered, though no proof had yet been laid bare. Sarah's voice trembled. "Then why do I feel like something is missing between us?" Rachel reached across the table, her hand shaking, but Sarah pulled back. The coffee cooled, untouched, as two friends sat divided by secrets and doubt. In that moment, Sarah realized trust was fragile, and even loyalty could feel like a mask. At home, Emily sat curled on the couch, crayons scattered around her. She pressed colors into the paper, but the drawing was jagged, lines heavy with unspoken worry. Sarah knelt beside her, brushing a curl from her face. "Sweetheart, what are you making?" she asked gently. Emily lifted the page, showing a picture of a house split down the middle. Sarah's heart cracked. "It's us," Emily said softly. Sarah forced a smile, though tears burned in her throat. "We'll always be together no matter what." Emily nodded, though her little shoulders sagged under a weight no child should carry. Sarah hugged her tightly, feeling the fragility of her daughter's trust. She whispered silently to herself, "Emily must never believe she is broken by this." Sarah kissed her forehead, swearing again she would fight harder than ever. The courthouse loomed ahead, its stone walls indifferent and cold. Sarah walked inside, her heels echoing as if marking the beat of her fear. Across the aisle, Michael stood with confidence, his lawyer whispering into his ear. Sarah felt the weight of his smirk, a silent attack designed to unnerve her. She sat down, gripping her file so tightly her knuckles blanched. The authority figure, David, adjusted his glasses, his eyes cool and detached as he glanced over her case. Sarah whispered, "Please, let them see the truth." The hearing began, Michael's lies presented with polished ease. Every word twisted the knife deeper, but Sarah held her ground. She straightened her shoulders, reminding herself she was here for Emily. For every lie Michael told, Sarah vowed to answer with the truth, no matter how much it cut her open. Late that night, Sarah sat alone on the couch, the silence deafening. She reached for the photo album on the shelf, flipping through pages of happier times. Smiles once real, now felt like faded illusions. Picture of her and Michael holding Emily as a newborn stabbed her heart. She whispered, "Where did we lose everything?" The memory of love twisted bitter in her chest. She shut the album quickly, pressing her hand against it as if to hold back the pain. Emily stirred in the next room, her small voice calling softly, "Mom?" Sarah wiped her eyes quickly, whispering back, "I'm here." The past might haunt her, but the future demanded her strength. She looked at the photo album once more, then pushed it aside. Her life was no longer defined by what was lost, but by what she had left to fight for. The courtroom air felt suffocating, every eye fixed on Sarah as she took the stand. Michael's lawyer painted her as unstable, weaving lies with the precision of a blade. Sarah's hands trembled on her lap, but her gaze never left Emily, seated quietly in the back. She whispered inside, "I won't let you down." Michael smirked, his voice dripping with false concern as he spoke of being a better parent. Rage bubbled inside Sarah, but she kept her voice steady when it was her turn. "All I have ever done is fight for my daughter," she said firmly, her words echoing. David, the authority figure, scribbled notes, his expression unreadable. Each second dragged, but Sarah refused to break. Every breath she took was defiance, every word a promise that she would not surrender. no matter how brutal this battle became. After the hearing, Sarah collapsed into a bench in the hallway, her strength drained. Rachel appeared, her steps uncertain, but her eyes filled with concern. "You can't give up now," Rachel urged, sitting beside her. Sarah let out a shaky breath, whispering, "I don't know how much more I can take." Rachel placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice firmer now. "You've carried Emily this far. You're stronger than you realize." Sarah studied her friend, searching for sincerity, fear still gnawing at her trust. Yet in Rachel's steady gaze, she saw the same loyalty that had once carried them through storms. For a fleeting moment, Sarah allowed herself to lean into that support, a reminder she didn't always have to stand alone. Strength could be borrowed, even when trust still felt fragile. That night, Emily sat by the bedroom door, her small face pale with fear. She had overheard too much, whispers of custody and separation etched into her mind. Sarah found her there, clutching her stuffed toy, eyes wet with confusion. "Are they going to take me away?" Emily asked softly. Sarah's chest tightened, but she forced a calm smile, kneeling to embrace her. "No one can take you from me," she whispered firmly. Emily's arms wrapped tightly around her neck, holding on as though she might disappear. Sarah stroked her hair, vowing silently that Emily would never know abandonment, no matter how cruel Michael's lies became. In the fragile stillness of that moment, Sarah realized her daughter was not just her responsibility. She was her reason, her anchor, and her fire. The next hearing cut deeper, Michael's lies sharpened like weapons. He spoke of Sarah's long hours, twisting them into accusations of neglect. Sarah sat silent, fury boiling beneath her skin as he painted himself the hero. David's questions sliced into her life, every answer weighing her future. Sarah's voice shook but remained steady. "Every hour I worked was to give Emily a better life." Michael sneered, whispering to his lawyer with a grin that made Sarah's stomach churn. It was clear he would stop at nothing, his cruelty masked behind a polished smile. Sarah glanced at Emily again, her small frame too innocent for this war. She clenched her fists beneath the table, a storm rising inside her. She would not allow his lies to win, not while Emily's future hung in the balance. When it ended, Sarah stumbled into the restroom, locking the door behind her. The mirror reflected her pale face, eyes red from holding back tears. She pressed trembling hands against the sink, whispering, "I can't do this." Her voice cracked, but in the silence, she heard her own breath steady. Emily's laughter from years ago, faint and remembered, echoed in her memory. She closed her eyes, clutching the sink tighter, drawing from the strength that motherhood demanded. "You can," she whispered again, this time firmer. The tears fell freely, but with them came resolve. She straightened, wiped her cheeks, and met her reflection once more. The woman staring back was scarred, but she was still standing. And as long as Emily needed her, Sarah knew she would never fall. The truth finally cut through Sarah's fragile hope. When she discovered Rachel's silence was more than worry. It was betrayal. The documents Michael had presented bore Rachel's signature, small but undeniable. Sarah's hands shook as she confronted her, voice breaking. "You knew. You gave him this." Rachel's eyes welled with tears, guilt carved across her face. "I thought I was protecting you," she whispered, but her words rang hollow. Sarah felt her chest collapse under the weight of shattered trust. Years of friendship dissolved in an instant, leaving only the sting of betrayal. Emily's laughter echoed faintly from the next room, a cruel reminder of what was at stake. Sarah turned away, her voice cold now. "You chose him. You chose wrong." In that moment, the bond that they had built cracked beyond repair. Rachel's apology spilled out, desperate and frantic, but Sarah's heart was locked. "You broke us," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with both rage and grief. Rachel stepped closer, reaching for her arm, but Sarah pulled back sharply, her eyes burning. "You were supposed to stand with me." Silence thickened the air, broken only by Rachel's quiet sobs. The friendship that had once been her refuge was now a wound too raw to touch. Sarah turned her back, her body rigid, forcing herself not to look again. In her chest, pain screamed louder than words, but she swallowed it down. Emily's safety meant she could not afford weakness, not anymore. Rachel's voice cracked one last time. "I never meant to hurt you." Sarah walked away, whispering only to herself, "Intentions don't erase betrayal." Days later, Sarah met Mark, a kind stranger whose smile softened the heaviness she carried. He was a friend of a co-worker, offering help when her car broke down. His words were simple, but they carried warmth she hadn't felt in years. "You don't have to do everything alone," he said gently. Sarah studied him, suspicion lacing her gratitude, unused to kindness without conditions. Emily peeked from the window, her small hand waving shyly, and Mark waved back with a laugh that felt disarming. For the first time in a long while, Sarah allowed herself to breathe without the weight of dread crushing her. Still, behind her smile lingered fear. Could she trust someone new when the closest people had already betrayed her? Hope flickered, fragile but undeniable, reminding her life could still surprise her. In the next court session, David's questions pierced Sarah's resolve. His voice was calm but cutting, demanding explanations for long work hours and gaps in her past. Sarah felt exposed, every sacrifice twisted into weakness. "Do you consider your environment stable for your child?" he asked, pen poised above his notes. Sarah's throat tightened, but she forced her voice steady. "I've given Emily stability in every way that matters: love, safety, and a home." Michael's smug smirk widened as David scribbled, his cold detachment making Sarah feel like her life was reduced to boxes on a form. The room seemed smaller, the walls pressing in. Yet Sarah sat straighter, her heart anchored in the thought of Emily's trust. She would not allow bureaucracy to define her worth as a mother. That night, sleep evaded Sarah. Memories of her father, Thomas, returned in sharp clarity, his voice guiding her through storms long past. She remembered sitting by the fire as he told her, "Strength isn't the absence of fear, it's walking through it anyway." Tears stung her eyes as she whispered into the silence, "I wish you were here." The past felt both a comfort and a wound, reminding her of love lost and wisdom still alive in memory. She closed her eyes, clinging to his words like a shield. Emily stirred in her bed, and Sarah tiptoed in, brushing her daughter's hair gently. "I'll carry us through, Dad. I'll carry us," she whispered to herself, the promise echoing louder than the doubt in her chest. Strength from the past became her anchor for the battles ahead. "What'd you win too?" The knock on Sarah's door was hesitant, but sharp enough to send her heart racing. She opened it to find Evelyn, the estranged aunt she had not seen in decades, standing there with tired eyes. "It's time we talked," Evelyn said softly. Sarah's breath caught, memories of abandonment rising like ghosts. Evelyn's presence was both a shock and a wound, stirring questions she had buried long ago. Emily peeked from behind her mother, curiosity flickering in her wide eyes. Evelyn's gaze softened as she whispered, "I've been watching from afar, waiting for the right moment." Sarah's hands trembled on the doorknob, torn between slamming it shut and pulling Evelyn inside. The weight of family secrets pressed down, but something in Evelyn's face made Sarah pause. The storm she feared had just stepped into her doorway. They sat across the table, silence heavy between them. Sarah's voice trembled as she asked, "Why now?" Evelyn's hands twisted in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. "Because Michael won't stop, and you can't fight him alone." The words struck like a hammer, truth woven with warning. Sarah's jaw tightened. Trust was not easily offered, not after years of silence. Evelyn lifted her gaze, tears glistening. "I should have been there. I should have protected you." Sarah's chest ached with anger and longing, the child within her still yearning for family. "You left me to fight alone," she whispered bitterly. Evelyn reached across the table, her voice shaking. "Let me help now before it's too late." Suspicion warred with desperation as Sarah studied her aunt's face, searching for sincerity in the cracks of regret. Emily broke the tension with her innocent curiosity, climbing onto Evelyn's lap without hesitation. "Are you my family?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with hope. Evelyn froze, her lips trembling before she nodded, whispering, "Hi, sweetheart. I'm your family." Sarah watched with a mix of fear and longing as Emily smiled for the first time in days. The sight carved into her heart, but it also unsettled her. Trusting Evelyn meant letting Emily bond with someone Sarah herself still doubted. She forced a shaky smile, whispering, "Be careful with her." Evelyn's arms tightened around the child, and for the first time, Sarah saw cracks in her aunt's composure. The bond between them was fragile, built on absence and regret, yet Emily's acceptance carried a strength Sarah couldn't ignore. Evelyn finally revealed the truth, her voice breaking. "Michael isn't just fighting for custody. He's using debts from your past against you. He has people helping him." Sarah felt her stomach drop, rage and fear intertwining. "How do you know this?" she demanded. Evelyn's eyes darkened. "Because I once helped him." Silence shattered like glass, Sarah's breath catching in fury. Betrayal wasn't new, but hearing it from blood carved deeper than anything Michael could do. Evelyn leaned forward desperately. "I regret it every day. I stayed close enough to protect you when I could. Now I need to undo what I started." Sarah's chest burned with fury, her fists clenching. "You made me your shield," she whispered, trembling. Trust and fury collided, leaving Sarah trapped in the storm of secrets finally revealed. Despite the anger clawing at her chest, Sarah realized Evelyn's knowledge could be the weapon she needed. She took a deep breath, whispering, "If you want to help, prove it." Evelyn nodded solemnly, her eyes heavy with remorse, but steady with determination. Emily stirred on the couch beside them, half asleep, her innocence untouched by the storm brewing around her. Sarah's hand brushed her daughter's hair, grounding herself in the promise she had made. Evelyn leaned closer, whispering details of Michael's manipulations. A map of lies finally laid bare. Sarah's stomach twisted, but her heart hardened. This was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming power. She looked her aunt in the eye and said firmly, "Then we fight together." For the first time, Sarah no longer felt completely alone. The courtroom brimmed with tension as Sarah took her seat for the final hearing. Michael stood tall, his lawyer already smirking with confidence. Sarah's hands shook under the table, but her gaze was firm. Evelyn sat behind her, eyes steady, a silent anchor. David entered, papers in hand, his measured steps echoing across the marble floor. "This case will decide custody once and for all," he declared. Sarah's pulse roared in her ears. Emily sat quietly in the gallery, her small frame a reminder of everything at stake. Michael's lawyer leaned forward, ready to strike with lies sharpened like blades. Sarah took a deep breath, whispering under her breath, "For Emily." The weight of years of sacrifice pressed down, but her resolve burned stronger. Today, truth would not be silenced. Michael's lawyer began with venom, disguised as concern. He painted Sarah as unstable, a woman too broken to provide stability. Sarah's jaw clenched, fury threatening to break her silence. When her turn came, she rose, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Every sacrifice I made was for my daughter. Every hour I worked was to keep her safe." Michael scoffed, muttering something under his breath that only deepened her resolve. David's pen scratched against paper, his face unreadable as he watched the exchange. The room seemed to pulse with pressure, but Sarah stood taller, her voice gaining strength with every word. She looked at Emily in the back, her daughter's innocent eyes watching, and whispered silently, "This is for you." No lie could erase the truth of her love. The confrontation peaked as Michael rose to speak. His words dripped with false sincerity. "I only want what's best for Emily." Sarah's fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. She rose slowly, her gaze locked on him. "You don't get to claim that. Not after you left us broken." Gasps rippled through the room. Michael's mask cracked, anger flashing in his eyes. For the first time the facade slipped, exposing the cruelty beneath. Sarah's voice grew sharper, her truth slicing through his lies. "I've carried her when you walked away. I've stood when you turned your back, and I will not let you take her from me now." Silence followed, the weight of her words pressing into every corner of the room. Michael's confidence wavered, his smirk fading as his lies unraveled. As evidence unfolded, Sarah faced not only Michael's lies but her own shame. Financial struggles, long nights, and past mistakes were laid bare. Her cheeks burned, but she did not look away. Evelyn's testimony brought truth to light, exposing Michael's manipulations, debts, and deceit. For every word spoken, Sarah felt both stripped and stronger, her scars no longer hidden but worn as proof of survival. "Yes, I struggled," Sarah admitted, her voice steady. "But I never abandoned my child. Not once." The courtroom stilled, David's pen pausing mid-stroke. The weight of her honesty hung in the air, undeniable. Michael's lawyer faltered, his carefully crafted image unraveling. Sarah's heart pounded, not with fear but with liberation. She had faced her past and refused to be ashamed of it anymore. The verdict loomed as the judge's gavel echoed, silence filling the room. Sarah gripped the table, her breath caught in her chest. Michael's smugness faltered, his eyes narrowing in doubt. David read through his final notes, then glanced at both sides with an expression unreadable. The air felt electric, every second stretching like an eternity. Emily clutched Evelyn's hand in the gallery, her eyes locked on her mother. Sarah whispered under her breath, "Please." The tension broke as David began to speak, his voice firm and final. In that moment, the weight of years hung suspended, waiting to crash. Sarah braced herself, knowing whatever came next would define not just her future, but Emily's entire world. The storm of truth and lies had reached its peak, and the final judgment was about to fall. The judge's words rang clear. Custody was granted to Sarah. Relief flooded her chest, but tears blurred her vision. Michael sat stunned, his fury masked by silence. Sarah's hands trembled as she whispered, "We did it, Emily." Evelyn squeezed her shoulder, pride mixed with sorrow in her eyes. Yet victory felt heavier than she expected, the scars of battle fresh and deep. Sarah looked at Michael one last time, her voice steady. "You can't break us anymore." His gaze burned with anger, but he said nothing. Emily rushed forward, arms wrapping around her mother's waist, whispering, "We can go home now, Mommy." Sarah clung to her daughter, the weight of sacrifice pressed into her arms. She had won, but she knew the fight had cost her more than she could ever regain. Back at the apartment, silence greeted Sarah, but this time it was peaceful. She set down her purse and watched Emily skip to her room, her laughter carrying through the small space. Sarah sat on the couch, exhaustion pressing into her bones. She whispered, "It's over." Yet, even as relief washed over her, the cost lingered. The betrayals, the long nights, the cracks in trust, all etched into her like scars that would never fade. She pressed her hands to her face, tears falling freely now that no one was watching. Evelyn entered quietly, setting a bag down. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. Sarah looked up, meeting her aunt's tired eyes, and for once she believed her. In that fragile moment, the apartment felt like home again, a place of healing instead of fear. Emily emerged from her room holding a stuffed toy, her smile brighter than Sarah had seen in weeks. She climbed onto her mother's lap, resting her head against her chest. "We're okay now, right?" she asked, eyes wide with hope. Sarah kissed the top of her head, whispering, "Yes, baby, we're okay." Evelyn watched quietly from the doorway, her face softened by a smile tinged with regret. Sarah held Emily tighter, breathing in her scent, letting the warmth of her daughter's presence ease the ache in her chest. For the first time, Sarah allowed herself to believe in tomorrow. Emily's laughter filled the room, light and pure, breaking through the shadows that had haunted them. The world outside was still uncertain, but inside this small home, love had won its place again. Later, as night settled, Sarah sat by the window, gazing out at the city lights. She thought of the battles fought, the friendships lost, and the wounds reopened. Each scar told a story of survival, proof she had endured. She whispered into the quiet, "I am stronger now." Behind her, Emily slept soundly, the rise and fall of her breath a rhythm of peace. Evelyn placed a blanket over Sarah's shoulders, her touch gentle. Sarah looked at her and nodded. No words needed. She had faced betrayal, shame and fear. Yet she remained standing. Her reflection in the glass was no longer of a woman broken, but one reborn. The past had carved deep lines, but the future stretched before her like dawn breaking. And for the first time, she was ready to meet it. The final evening was quiet, the air filled with peace instead of tension. Sarah stood outside Emily's door, her hand resting on the frame. She whispered a vow to herself, "We're stronger now, and we'll never stop fighting." Pushing the door open, she saw Emily fast asleep, her small face lit by the glow of a nightlight. Sarah sat beside her, brushing a curl from her forehead, her heart overflowing with love. Evelyn leaned against the wall, watching silently, her presence no longer distant but part of their fragile circle. Sarah's smile was real this time, unmasked and free. She kissed Emily's cheek, whispering, "You'll never be alone." The world outside remained uncertain, but inside this home, they had found strength, love, and a new beginning forged through fire.